All right, folks. We all know that one of the most common mishaps in hunting is damage to your rifle scope. Last year, I found the solution to that problem with the Stealthy Hunter rifle cover. It wraps around your scope and actions securely to protect it from getting knocked off of zero or even severely damaged. Stealthy Hunter also has a glassing pad and a wide variety of supplements for the outdoorsman, such as protein powder, CBD products, turmeric, and gut health supplements. They also make a lightweight trauma kit weighing in at just 14 ounces that includes everything you need and nothing you don't for all of your backcountry medical emergencies. To shop all of their equipment and supplements, go to StealthyHunter.com and enter the discount code at checkout, The Northern Hunter, to save on your order today. All Stealthy Hunter equipment is proudly made in the USA.
You're listening to the Northern Hunter Podcast, home of all things hunting, fishing, and outdoors in Alaska. All right, everybody, welcome back to the show. My name is James Payne.
I'm Mariah Humphreys.
And today we are going to be covering what some people would consider a depressing topic, but for me, I find it kind of exciting.
I mean,
after being here enough years.
Yeah, I look at it, in some ways it's depressing because there's always more I want to get done in the summer. But, but there's a lot of fun in the wintertime, right?
Well, and that's what we're talking about. Winter
if
is
you avail
around
yourself of it.
the corner.
Yeah.
So if anybody's living up here in Alaska, you've probably noticed lights getting less and less. Daylight's going away.
Yep.
Temperatures are dropping. I think they're calling for snow this week in Fairbanks, aren't they?
Really?
Yeah, later in the week, they're calling for a little bit of snow. We're already down in the 30s and below freezing at night. So at least it has been at my house. So it's winter's getting real, and we're going to talk about the reasons, at least if you live in Alaska or really anywhere in the northern regions of the country, where a lot of this stuff is valuable, except for maybe the last one. There's a lot of stuff you can get out and do in the wintertime. There are a lot of reasons to be excited for the wintertime. It's always, like you said, a little disappointing when you didn't get everything you wanted done, especially around the house when the yard starts getting covered up with snow. But there's a lot of stuff to do. We're going to be talking about all that. But before we do, guys, if this is your first episode listening to us, or if you've been listening to us for a while, you know it is more based around being kind of an educational platform. So if you have any questions about hunting in the northern region of Alaska, definitely reach out to us. You can hit us at our social medias. You search at The Northern Hunter on either Facebook or Instagram, you'll be able to get to us. If you go to our website, thenorthernhunter.com, we've got a contact button there. Just throw a little bit of information in, and that'll get a message emailed to us. And we're always growing. We're always trying to do more and bring more information out to you guys. So if you'd like to support us, the easiest way is just sharing the show with your friends, subscribing to it, liking it on whatever platform you're listening to it. And if you wouldn't mind, while you're on the website, if you go to the shop page, you can get some merch. That really helps us out. And we have a partners page with a bunch of great companies that have all believed in what we're doing and decided to sponsor us. We've got discount codes and stuff like that. It's all listed there, both on the website and in the show notes. If you decide to go grab up some great gear from these companies and use that discount code, it helps them out and it really helps us out too. So we appreciate all that support there. Before we get into wintertime though, moose season, at least firearm season, I should say, in the region closest to where we live,
right,
just closed down.
I mean,
at the time of this recording. Actually, it's been closed for a couple days now.
Right. Well, by the time this comes out, it'll be almost a week.
Almost a week, yeah.
No, it'll have been over a week.
Yep. So how'd your moose season go? At least your firearm season.
Well, I put a lot of time into it. As I told you before we started recording here, I hunted 13 of the 15-day season.
Yep.
13 days out of the 15-day season. I couldn't hunt all the mornings because of work and such, but I always would get out and pretty much hunted the same spot, same area. And I got to, there was a spot I could drive to and walk to, like 10-minute walk, sit down, call, and hunt. And, for a few hours each night, once I'd get in there and try to get in there before the temperature started dropping, because that's usually when the moose start to move.
Yep.
I saw some
then
cows.
You're in there quiet, sitting. Yep.
I saw some cows and some calves. Didn't see any bulls, which was, depressing. But that's kind of the way. it works. There's some other guys I knew that were hunting in the same area. They were hunting a little better spot in that same area, and he saw a lot of cows.
Yeah.
But he didn't see any bulls either.
I've seen a steady drop the last couple of years. I mean, even just driving around, you used to see him on the side of the road all the time, and you still do every once in a while, but not nearly what it was 5 years ago, 6 years ago, anything like that. And I don't know if that's due to the winter, the ice rain we got, hunting pressure, or whatever it might be, but it just seems like there's not as many as there used to be, if you were to ask me. Spots I used to hunt where guys would pull 15 bulls out of there in a season, in large areas. And now you're lucky to get 3 or 4. Right.
Well, and before the big cow hunt, I don't remember what year that was. I remember it all happening, and I remember driving. My dad used to moose hunt.
Yeah.
In Unit 20B with a bow, even during rifle season. And the way he would do it is he would drive around and through neighborhoods and look for moose.
Yeah.
And he'd find a moose and go knock on somebody's door and say, "Hey, do you mind if I shoot this bull moose out of your yard?" And most of the time, yeah, sure. Right.
Yep.
And he'd walk up and, he'd sneak up and put an arrow in it. Right. And
it's a very Midwestern way to hunt. If you think about it, if you grow up around like where I'm from with farm country, that's exactly what you do is you go knock on the farmer's door and say, "Hey, can I hunt these deer?"
Yeah. And that's what he did for years, and not necessarily always driving around. There was a lot of times he'd go walk an area or something
absolutely.
like that. But he got a moose every year for a long time. And once they did all the big cow hunts, that it really decimated the moose population in 20B, and it hasn't recovered.
Yeah.
And I think Dalton may have mentioned that a little bit.
I think he did, yeah.
And, I don't know if it ever will quite recover like it did. They'd have to really shut it down a lot.
There's a lot of varying opinions on what it would take to get that to come back. And I can tell you, just in the 14, 15 years I've lived here, it's definitely gone down quite a bit.
And I remember that as being a young kid and hunting with my dad, right? And then how quickly it changed from, you talked about seeing moose on the side of the road 5 or 6 years ago, or even just a couple years ago.
Yeah.
And it still happens. But, not just moose on the side of the road, not during moose season, but moose on the side of the road so much that's how you could hunt.
Right.
We had a lot of moose.
Yeah.
And I got my first moose by doing the same thing, pretty much. Same kind of situation. Shot it out of somebody's yard in a neighborhood.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And
perfectly legal, perfectly viable.
Legal with my bow. Right?
Yep.
And, it's sad that it's not like that anymore. Definitely increases the difficulty, makes it a lot harder for a lot of people to get meat.
Right. Well, and that's like we talked about in a prior episode is a lot of this moose hunting. It's not, just a for fun thing.
Right.
This is how people are feeding their families. They're filling their freezers. It's you get one animal down, you're good for the year. And a lot of people rely on that, and it's getting harder. You're having to go farther. That's kind of what I ended up doing most of the rifle season down here. I was actually I was dedicating a lot more time to scouting than I was necessarily pushing hard for hunting. I've got some later season plans that are still in play that I'm working on for an actual longer hunt. But one thing, and I recommend this to a lot of people too, scouting before season is awesome. We always recommend that. Scouting during season is even better. Because now you're not only seeing, okay, this is a good spot for whether it's moose or bear or anything else. You're seeing how many other people know it's a good spot.
Right.
You're seeing how much competition you have in that area. Now you can go in there and estimate ahead of time based on wheeler tracks and things like that. You see evidence of camps and whatnot, how many people you think are in there, but you really get a good idea of the competition level in an area when you go there during season. And, it's never a bad thing to go to an area and just check it out and see what you're dealing with. And then you kind of know for the year ahead. That's what I've been dedicating a lot of time to, trying to figure out good spots that are a little bit more maybe out there, maybe a little harder to get to, things like that. We've talked about that a lot, just making sure you're not on top of everybody else, because that's when everybody diminishes their own efforts. But, moose hunting, 20B, the season closes on the 15th of September. Hopefully everybody knew that already. You're not listening to this while you're out there. But it doesn't mean moose all over the state is closed. There's some areas that go till the 25th. A lot of areas that go till the 25th. There's areas actually that go till October 1st in some areas of the state.
Right.
There's some actual later winter hunts, so it's not like all hope is lost. There's archery hunts that are still open.
Yeah.
And I think that's pretty much what all of us are pushing at. So
yeah, there's a lot of guys gearing up now to go, at least not necessarily when this podcast comes out, but when we're recording it, which is about, a week prior.
Yeah.
There's a lot of guys gearing up right now to head out because the later the season, the better the hunt usually is because of the rut.
Deeper into the rut. Yep.
Right. They don't even head out.
The weather's colder. Yep. They're moving around more.
Exactly.
That's kind of what I'm hoping to get into there. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. Right. It's always, it's a hunt, not a guarantee. So that's the part that makes it fun. So with the snowfall right around the corner though, after moose season, essentially October's a pretty slow month. There's not a whole lot going on in October, I'd say.
Yeah, it depends on what you're looking at. I mean, I know for me, I've gone out, done a lot of predator hunting. We talked about that in bears in October.
Yeah.
It's not going to be fast like the kind of hunting you're looking at in
right.
And for moose season. Moose season is probably by far the biggest, most hunters in the woods.
Yep, absolutely. I would say bears and wolves are pretty much the only thing you can really chase in October. I know most predator seasons don't open, like by predator I mean like fox, lynx, things like that, until November in most units. Sometimes even later than that, depending on species.
Right.
And I don't know. We'll just dive right into this first one here. You have a lot more experience at this than I do, so I'll let you do a lot of the talking here. But trapping.
Right.
Trapping is probably one of the best ways I would think to stay busy in the winter from everything I've been told.
It is a good way to stay busy.
Yeah, it's a lot of work, a lot of effort. I've not run my own trap line. I've witnessed trap lines. I've gone out and walked things, but so you have a lot. You kind of grew up doing that stuff.
I did, yeah.
And so why don't you go into kind of when you guys started doing that, like what that would look like and the kind of gear that people should look at if they're looking to get like a trap line going this year.
If you're looking to start a trap line this year, so there's two ways to run a trap line. One is off of sled, snow machine, or snowmobile, depending on where you're at. Everybody knows what we're talking about. And the other is on foot and snowshoe. And there's guys that really there's the purists that like to do it on snowshoe. More power to you. I would love to do it that way if I had the time. Right. And it's not the effort that I'd be afraid. It's the time.
Right.
Like I have a hard enough time. I don't ever have time to do all the things I want to do. Right. I work a full-time job and I'm part of this podcast and a million other things going on, trying to get ready for winter. Right.
Yeah.
And like we said at the beginning, I look forward to the trap, whether I trap this year or not, I look forward to the trapping and the predator hunting and all the stuff that comes that we can do in the wintertime, hunting and non-hunting, excursions in the outdoors. But the part I don't like is all the stuff I have to get ready that I should have got done in the middle of summer and now winter's coming. So now I have to get it done if it's going to happen.
Yeah. Before the snow gets or snow covers all the ground.
Seems like
temperatures drop.
I've got a bunch of dirt work I'm still planning on doing and like all this stuff. And, a lot of this stuff doesn't happen until October for most guys, I think. But it's
most of the time.
It's just the way it goes. And like you say, October, moose season's over. There's not a lot going on. So I think that's part of the reason that happens the way it does.
Absolutely.
But trapping. So what you need if you're going to start out, well, obviously you need a snow machine if you're going to run it that way. I would recommend that.
Yeah.
Unless you have, you have a free weekend every weekend or a free day every week.
Yeah.
That you have all day to walk or 2 days, depending on what you're doing.
Yeah.
Because, there's length. How long are you going to set it up? How long is it going to be? Obviously, it can be a lot longer with a snow machine.
Right. Yeah.
Than on foot.
Yeah. You're talking from like a couple of miles to like 100+ miles sometimes,
right. Now,
depending on how committed these people are to it. Now, obviously, those are people that probably aren't working full-time in the winter.
Well, 100+ mile trap line can be run in a day.
Yeah. If you're
on a snow machine, if you got a good trail,
right,
and you got to know what you're doing, right? You just move, and the way that would work is any trap line. Usually, the way it works, once you get it set up, is you start but you start out and you just go checking every trap. You're checking the traps. And a lot of times you pull up to it and you won't even get off the machine because it all looks good.
Right.
But a lot of times you're dusting snow off because there's buildup on top of it or, on top of the trap. And you're going to freshen up the bait, maybe freshen up with a little scent, by the way. Batum 907 has trapping lures.
Absolutely, they do.
And use code TNHP at checkout and get a discount there. A nice one.
Very nice one, actually.
Yeah. Anyhow, you have to check out some of the trapping lures. I haven't used any of her trapping lures, so maybe I'll have to do that this year.
Yeah.
But anyhow, you'll freshen it up, and you just do that. Next one, a lot of guys will try to run a loop, but a lot of times it's called a line for a reason. You run a straight line out, and then you ride the same trail back.
Yep.
Or sometimes it's like a big circle kind of thing, and then so they'll run part of it back, and then you've got like a cutoff shortcut back.
Okay.
Because you check it, and you set it on the way out, and then you just ride back.
Yeah.
So like most of your day is getting out there. And once you get out there, well, then it's a pretty fast ride back.
Mm-hmm.
But that's also when you're going to get cold.
Yeah.
Because working during the day, the sun's up, it's warmer, it might be 10, 20 degrees warmer than it will be at night or in the evening. So you start out, you're a little chilly, you got a bunch of gear on, you start working at it, you start getting a little sweaty.
Yeah.
Right? And that's fine because you're going from trap to trap, from set to set. You're checking, you're getting off, you're walking around with your gear on, and you're staying warm.
Yeah.
And the mistake a lot of people make, and this is trying to delve into some of the gear that you're going to need, is they get to the end of the trap line and unless, if you're walking, you probably won't have this issue. But if you're running a snow machine, they'll get to their end of the trap line and they get the last one done. And all right, boom, I'm headed back. And they head back and they do that with sweated out gear.
Oh, yeah.
So the number one thing to wear, no matter, like if you're a Carhartt guy and you like your black Carhartts, which a lot of people rave about, they're nowhere near as good as a lot of the good snow machining gear and stuff like that you can get now, the synthetic materials. Like the black Carhartts, especially in like 40 below or something, or 20 below even, they don't cut it compared to what like a really good winter.
Right.
Like, they're tough.
Something that's designed to be windproof and all that other Like,
well, so Carhartts are pretty good. The black ones especially are really good, like the windproof stuff. I have some of those that I use for work because they're tough.
That's what I use for work too, yeah.
But that's not what I run on a trap line or on a sled.
What's your preferred?
Refrigiwear is really good.
They're actually really affordable too.
And they're affordable.
Yeah.
They're not insanely priced.
Yeah. They're not nearly what some of these other coat and bib brands are. I mean, and I know a lot of people that run those, and down to the temperature rating that they're stated, a lot of them are rated to -40. Some of them, like the coveralls, are actually rated for like -50, -60, depending on which model you get. And I know a lot of guys on the slope use those too. But I've heard guys that really push them to the limit, and it holds true.
Refrigiwear is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Now, regardless of what you wear as an outer, if you use Refrigiwear, if you use, I don't know, Activate, if you whatever you want, Arc'teryx, whatever, right? Yeah. Whatever you use for your outer layer, whatever
another big brand too.
Your preferred brand is. The biggest, most important thing you need to have is a good wicking layer.
Yeah. Because very important in the winter.
Even if you have a good wicking layer, if you sweat that out and it's still wet when you turn around, you're going to freeze on the way back and you will be shivering and very cold by the time you get back to your cabin or whatever you've got going for, or your truck or whatever it is.
Yep.
I've known guys that run such a long line that they actually they'll actually strip down to their underwear and put on a dry base layer.
Yeah.
That, and sure, it might be 20 below out, but they strip down and put that on so that they're warm.
Well, and it's pretty surprising how fast you warm back up after
you do, especially
gear.
If you put something warm on, right?
Yeah.
Or dry on.
Yep.
Now, so that's the number one thing is a good base layer. And it took a long time to say that, but that's how we are around here.
No.
Right. And, other than that, so, trapping materials, obviously I mentioned, some good trapping bait from Batum 907. Depending on what you're trying to trap, if you're going after lynx or fox, coyote, fox and coyote have, a lot of similar kind of sets, and bait. Wolf is a whole nother ball game. Lynx typically have a little bit of a different style of setup because they're, the way they hunt and the way they look at stuff is different. You got marten, which is what a lot of guys will run a trap line and just run marten.
Right. Yeah, that's a real popular one up here. It is. Yeah.
So, finding traps and stuff, there's a lot of places that carry traps. I think there might be, so I grew up doing it with my dad, so I wasn't like buying the traps and stuff. But there are places in Fairbanks that sell trapping materials and trapping supplies.
Yeah,
and
several places.
There are. And so, you can get some of it, Sportsman's carry some traps and stuff. But you don't just want to go buy a brand new trap and set it.
Yeah.
And you try to use it that way. It looks all shiny and all that kind of stuff. You want to season it.
Yeah.
And the way you season it, I think the best way to do it is you put it in a bucket of water with some spruce boughs and stuff like that, and you boil it.
Yeah.
Then you let it sit out and you let it rust. Because what that does is it helps it take on the scent. It gets rid of all the oils that are on it. It helps take care of the scent.
Yeah, because you don't want that nice shiny metal that's oiled and primed and all that. Yeah. Yep.
You want to season your trap because those new, they work a lot better in the cold that way. If you bring them out there, you might think they'd work better with the oils and stuff they come on, but they don't. They're sticky.
Yeah,
they've got those kind of hard edges on them and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And the best kind of trap looks brown.
Yeah.
Right. And it's not even necessarily, some of it's some kind of oxidization and rust. It's not like that orange rust that I'm necessarily talking about. But that's important, is to season your traps. So you don't want, not on steel. It's on copper. I guess you could run copper coated traps or something. I don't know. I don't know anything about that, but snares are similar. You don't necessarily have to season them quite the same way. You do want to boil them, but they're not going to turn brown necessarily. But,
right.
A lot of guys actually can make their own snares. You can buy the materials, you can order them, make your own snares.
Oh, so they sell those little clips in bulk, don't they?
Yeah.
The little.
So there's the snare lock.
Yeah.
And then you've got your clasps and stuff that, and a lot of times we can go into more of this and maybe do some videos on it or something when we start doing videos. And those may not be, real good for anybody till next year when we start doing that. But, basically a snare is a piece of cable, real nice cable, kind of like what you would think of as like on a dog run or a zip line.
Yeah.
But, small diameter, maybe 1/8 inch diameter. And it's real nice, slick piece of cable. And you have a piece of metal that's bent and kind of almost like a G shape.
Okay.
Like a capital G. And it's got a couple holes in it. And the way it creates a loop, the way it slides on the cable, and what happens is when you stick something in that loop and you pull down tight, that it acts as a lock. It's called the snare lock. And it will not allow it to reopen up without external.
Yep.
Like using your hand and your, opposable thumbs that God gave us, right? to turn it and pull it open.
Yeah.
So when an animal goes into it, it tightens up. You could create a noose out of some string, or if you wanted to get real old fashioned, you could use a rawhide or something, right? But it isn't going to have that lock necessarily. And so, a lot of older, used to have to set up a snare is you had to have it sprung. So it would spring and it would pull tight and hold tight.
Yeah.
With the newer snares like that, it actually, they'll walk into it. And by the time they realize it's there, it's tightened up around their neck and it's too late.
Right.
And, we'll talk a lot about methodologies and stuff, how you'd use that.
I was going to say really quickly, because we obviously don't have time to go over every set right now, but give the people a rabbit hole of research to go down to.
Okay.
What are the sets they should look into for getting into trapping? Like what's the beginner level sets that they should look into?
Well, first look up, I believe it's called Alaska Trapper magazine. Look into that. There's more information in there that, and it's a really good magazine, or how it's laid out.
Is that a once a month or?
I believe it is
quarterly.
My dad used to get it. I don't get it right now, but maybe I should subscribe to it. But they have a website, Alaska Trappers Association, and they have a membership, and they've got books, and I think you actually may be able to order a lot of trapping supplies from them.
Yeah, those guys are a great resource. I know a couple of them.
Yeah, they're a tremendous resource.
Yeah.
And anyhow, so basic set, you got your marten set, typical marten set. There's two ways of doing it. You set up a pole on a tree, and you put a trap about halfway. You set a pole, kind of one end's on the ground, one end's up in the air. You tie it to a tree. You put your trap, you say halfway between the tree and the end of the pole, sticking up in the air, and you put your bait at the top of the pole.
Yeah.
That's a good way to catch birds. Also, incidental catch, which, is not a good thing, right?
Right.
The bird doesn't do you any good.
Bait for the next one.
You're not supposed to use incidental catch for bait.
Oh, really?
That's illegal. Yeah.
No kidding. Because I know you can use like wings and stuff like that off of like grouse and whatnot.
And grouse, that was another thing I was going to say.
But they differentiate incidental catch.
Grouse season has been open for a while now.
Yeah.
Keep those wings and throw them in a bag in a freezer.
Mm-hmm.
You can hang those from a wire over a link set, and that's like an attractant, like a cat attractant, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Or you can take the feathers and like throw them on the ground to kind of create a simulated kill with some stink.
Right.
From Beta 907, right? And anyhow, so with the martin, that's my ideal way to do it. A lot of guys will do a conibear, which is a full body trap, and they'll set it on that pole. Or they'll actually attach it to the side of a tree and put some kind of bucket or something above it with bait up inside there. And you don't catch birds that way because birds hunt by sight.
Right.
Yeah. I don't like that as much because the kind of trap, you actually have to remove the trap from the field and have new traps with you.
Gotcha.
Because it's a body trap, so they're frozen in it. Right. So I'm not as big of a fan of that.
Okay.
It's all in the way you want to do it.
So you're more of a foothold guy.
But those are the two basic ways of doing that.
Okay.
Your snares, usually you set those up on existing trails. A lot of times you'll set them up on when you have a martin set, you'll set a few snares around it. Either you see beat trails through the snow from predators, or you just hang one off the tree underneath that pole.
Yeah.
Because that's just kind of the place a predator is going to walk when they're circling.
Right.
That martin or bird that's in that trap, right? So that's a good place to put those. And when you're running down your trail and you see a place where predators have crossed, or rabbits, if you've got a good rabbit trail, you set the snare up high enough the rabbits don't bother it.
Yep.
When that coyote comes running along or that fox comes
chasing
running along,
those rabbits.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Boom. Or lynx.
Yeah.
Probably caught more. I've personally probably snared more critters that way.
Really?
Than
Yeah.
anything else. And that's kind of how you use a snare.
Okay.
You can do some snare sets, but that's more of a wolf thing, and I'm not going to really get into wolves right now. Wolves are a whole different,
that's a whole
game,
episode,
right? And with lynx, it will just sets for lynx or fox or coyote, your kind of main predators there, your bigger predators. You can, you typically use a leg hold. You can use full body, once again, the full body conibear style. Though those are, once again, you have to have one with you to swap it out.
Right.
And especially you get up to like, what are those, like the 220s, the big ones.
Yeah.
And those are big traps.
They're
big, they're heavy.
Expensive too.
They are.
Yeah.
Although they have their advantages with something like if you're trying to catch a wolverine, they're great for that because that's a tough critter and it's a tough trap.
Yeah.
We caught a wolverine in a wolf snare.
Oh, really?
And he had about 6 feet of number 9 wire and real big heavy duty cable we use for wolves turned into about 6 inches.
No kidding.
From twisting and spinning. If you've been there very much longer.
He probably had the ground all torn up too, huh?
Yeah, he did. Yeah. Well, and he, they have such a strong neck, whereas most, like a wolf, that would have killed.
Oh, so he was able to just
But because his neck is so strong, it didn't choke him, right? He was just, if he had been there much longer, he would have got away.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because we put a 22 in him and
took
home a beautiful fur. Yeah. Carry a 22 with you.
Carry a 22 with you.
We were just talking about that 20, that you're talking about wanting that Mark IV.
Oh, yeah.
I have a Mark III from Ruger Target Model 22. Oh, that's amazing.
Yep. And when you're trapping, a pistol's fine.
Right.
Like, 22 pistol.
Perfect.
It's perfect. It's lightweight.
Right.
It's out of the way. It's not falling off your shoulder.
Right.
So had one more question for you.
Okay.
So one of the biggest holdups for people getting into trapping is finding a good spot.
Yeah.
And that's been one of my bigger holdups because I found a lot of good spots, but there's typically already tags on trees or something.
Trapper signs in there and whatnot.
There's already a trapper in there, which, at least where we live, it's a pretty common activity. So that's not entirely surprising. But for somebody that's looking out, trying to find a good trapping spot, what's like the landmark features they're looking for as far as where they would want to set up? Lowland, highland,
predators tend to roam it all, especially in the wintertime. Once things freeze over, it's really easy for them to travel wherever they want.
Yeah.
Marten are supposed to be more timber dwellers, bigger spruce trees, those kinds of areas.
That's where I've normally seen them.
Although I know we've tended to catch a lot of them, in the areas bordering that.
Okay.
And I don't know why that is specifically. Some areas have a lot more marten. Some areas don't. Marten are cyclical too, but not in the same way like muskrats are, where muskrats will grow up so much in a lake and there'll be such a huge population, they die off, the food dies off. Martin are cyclical in a way. They'll move from, they'll be on one like timber on hills and mountains, and the whole like population will kind of move.
Yeah.
And to another area for a while. And then, and they just kind of, it's kind of weird. And that's some of the stuff I've read about them.
So as a group, they almost move out.
Yeah. It's kind of weird. Yeah. And so there'll still be some remaining, but not the kind of population. So they're not like dying off necessarily.
They're just migrating.
They're just moving.
Deal.
Right.
Yeah.
And obviously with food and all that, there's going to be higher and lower populations because of that too.
Right.
On the lynx and fox and coyote sets real quick. Typically you want to use a leg hold.
Okay.
You're going to throw, like I said, you're going to throw some kind of attractant or smell or bait, some kind of rotten piece of meat, from your freezer or whatever.
Yep.
Or save some of those scraps that you're not going to use from your moose that are not edible meat.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
You could use bones or anything like that.
And anything not intended for human consumption.
Right. And actually something that a real good trick is to take some moose hide, chop it up.
Oh, yeah.
Put it in plastic bags and let it slip. And let it get real rotten.
Yeah.
And then hang that.
Yep. And not to dive into wolf too much, because like we said, that's a whole other thing. But when I had mentioned in one of our previous moose episodes where like when I bring an animal out of the field, I try to bring the whole thing. A lot of that is because I know guys that will trap wolves and they'll use like caribou hooves and moose hooves and stuff like that for their sets. Right. So, I mean, you can use all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just a testament to you can use all kinds of stuff for those.
Yeah. Typically your sets for your main predators, lynx usually use a little bit more of an eye attractant, whereas for other critters you use more of a scent, like because they're you just think about the like a cat and the way a cat hunts, versus the way like a canine would hunt, right?
Yeah.
And there's so many different sets for those. You've got your cubbies, right? A lynx cubby, like it's a hole that they go into.
Yeah. I've seen people use like the old newspaper, delivery boxes, things like you see those a lot.
Yeah, I've seen those a lot actually from Martin hanging on trees and stuff like that. Yeah. Anyhow, there's a lot of things with trapping. We can get into more of the specifics later.
And we'll definitely do whole episodes on things and dive into more extreme details. But hopefully we've been able to give people some research rabbit holes to go down.
Yeah.
So,
like I said, I would go to Alaska Trappers Association, alaskatrappers.org. Subscribe to the magazine or get a hold of some of those magazines, maybe even some of the older ones. Get on there, start reading, start looking it up, start watching videos, because like I said, it's a rabbit hole. You got to go down. There's all kinds of methods and tactics for scent control.
I think they even have some DVDs and stuff like that.
I think
don't
they do. Yeah, they do.
Yeah, great resource. So, let's take a quick break real quick, and then we'll dive into this next one.
All right, folks. We all know that one of the most common mishaps in hunting is damage to your rifle scope. Last year, I found the solution to that problem with the Stealthy Hunter rifle cover. It wraps around your scope and actions securely to protect it from getting knocked off of zero or even severely damaged. Stealthy Hunter also has a glassing pad and a wide variety of supplements for the outdoorsman, such as protein powder, CBD products, turmeric, and gut health supplements. They also make a lightweight trauma kit weighing in at just 14 ounces that includes everything you need and nothing you don't for all of your backcountry medical emergencies. To shop all of their equipment and supplements, go to StealthyHunter.com and enter the discount code at checkout, The Northern Hunter, to save on your order today. All Stealthy Hunter equipment is proudly made in the USA.
So I like in the layout here, you separated trapping from rat trapping.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming by rat trapping, you mean muskrats.
I do.
All right.
So
go into why you separated those two.
So the reason I separated that is because, I mean, you could even throw squirrel trapping on there, although that's a little different for up here, but
I've never heard of that.
Well, it's more for the same reason you shoot them is, keep them out of the area because they'll chew up,
tearing up your cabins and stuff.
Up, right, yeah. So a lot of times in like a trapping cabin type setting, you'll have a log leaning up against a tree, throw a trap on top of it, like a small leg hold.
Okay.
And the squirrels will just use that to run up.
Yeah.
And we do that and come back with like 5 or 6 of those traps filled.
Nice.
Some of them with the squirrel gone because the predator ate it. Mm-hmm. But but rats, specifically muskrats. water rats. They typically live in lakes and sloughs up here. I haven't really seen any on rivers, although that's probably not unheard of.
I've seen a few, but not common at all.
Although I don't think those are really trappable necessarily, at least not the tactics I'm familiar with.
Okay.
At least up here because our winters are so cold.
Mm-hmm.
I've never trapped muskrat anywhere without ice. And without a lot of ice.
Yeah.
That's a disclaimer. If you live somewhere, you live in southeast Alaska, most of the lower 48, the way you're going to trap muskrats there and the way you're trap muskrats up here are completely different.
Yeah.
What we do is we'll go out, usually March is when we'll start this.
Okay. So just pre-breakup, basically.
Pre-breakup, yeah. March, we'll head out to the lakes, right? And my dad's got a trapping cabin, so we head out. There's a great big lake by his trapping cabin.
Nice.
There's lakes and sloughs, and the sloughs all connect to other lakes and ponds and stuff like that. And usually there's a few rat huts at each one.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say rat hut, we'll call them a push-up because I'm sure you've probably seen it, but in the middle of a lake, you'll see like a grass, like a mound of grass in the middle of the lake. Have you ever seen that?
Yep,
okay.
I have.
Now, a lot of times they're snowed over. If it's a real windy spot, you don't see it as much. But the reason that we primarily hunt them or trap them in towards the spring, towards breakup, is because the sun's starting to heat up a little bit more up here.
Yeah.
And it'll actually start to bring those out of the snow. You'll start to see them show up. They're getting bigger because they've been using them all winter. And then the sun will, because they're dark, the snow will burn out around them. So they're easier to find.
Gotcha.
And so what you'll do is you'll take a bunch of aught traps. I mean, like 0. You don't want anything bigger. Or you can take like those conibears we were talking about, the body traps.
Yep.
And they have some round ones. Those work quite well too.
Okay.
But usually we just use like leg holes that are real light. Don't snap hard because rats have real weak leg bones. And you'll take those. You'll take a bunch of sticks or stakes. We usually just take like 1 inch to 1.5 inches in diameter willows and chop them up in like 2 and 3 foot lengths. We'll tie a piece of flag tape at the top and tie the wire of the trap, usually with a little extra length of wire, somewhere a few, 6 inches to a foot up from the bottom of that stake. So you get a bunch of those, right?
Yeah.
Depending on how many traps you're going to set, anywhere from 5 if you're going to do a few to, and you want some extras, to 30 or 40, depending on how serious you're going to be about it.
Okay.
And you may live somewhere in town. And keep in mind, you need a trapping license and all that, right?
Oh, yeah.
But you may live somewhere close to town or in town. You may live on a gravel pit or a pond or something. And you may have seen these push-ups that I've talked about. They look like a bunch of grass and weeds.
Yep.
And what they are is the rats will burrow a hole in the ice that they keep open throughout the winter. And they'll come up and they push a bunch of grass and weeds up. And what they do is they create a little hut. And they'll come up in there. And there's usually just enough room for them to come up out of the water. There's a little ledge. And they'll sit there and they'll eat a bunch of those greens, and whatever they don't eat, they push out the side of it. Okay. So they'll have like these weird, like round, almost big turd looking. They're not brown, but they just, their shape and the way they stick out, they'll have like these weird things like just sticking out the sides because they'll push it just right out the hut.
Yep.
And I mean, you'll find them with fox tracks over to them, or a fox tore it open and ate a rat out of it, or sat there and waited till he heard a rat inside and listened. And then he'll do it, right? And I have chopped into them and seen a rat. I chopped into one time. The first time I chopped into it, and there's a rat tail there. Like he was getting ready to go down in the hole, but he hadn't swum away yet. And I grabbed the tail and yanked him out. Yanked him out of the hole and then smacked him on the head.
Nice.
But so if you get Alaska Trappers Magazine, and you may find a rat trapping, muskrat trapping section in there.
Yep.
And it may show a push-up, and it may show like the ideal setup, how this ledge is just under the water and it's the perfect place to set the trap and all this kind of stuff. That is the exception of a hole.
Okay.
Most of them are not like that.
Okay.
Most of them have barely enough room for that rat inside there, and they're fat little furry dudes.
What is like the average size of one of those things?
They're typically, I don't know, 10 to 12 inches long, nose to butt. And then they've got, an 8, 10, 11, 12 inch tail.
Yeah.
Long, narrow tail that's real tough. And they've got webbed feet, webbed hind legs and short little kind of like a little beaver. They've got the same kind of teeth on the front.
Yep.
And
I know I've seen them in the summertime a lot.
You see them swimming.
And they look like they're fat little critters.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
They're fat little round, and the fur is real soft and nice. They when you see them swimming, they look like a small beaver.
Okay.
They've got the same teeth, the same kind of head looking out, but they've got a different kind of tail. They're smaller. Beavers create huts too, but beaver creates a big huts out of logs.
Yeah.
Rat creates a small hut. And the rat hut is seasonal, right? A beaver hut they use year round.
Yeah.
Anyhow, and I guess beaver trapping is a whole nother thing too.
Oh, it is. Yeah.
But that's more of a throughout the winter as well. It can be in the spring, but so the trap, the sticks, and a lot of times you can even get some of those traps that you use for your squirrels and stuff, right?
Yeah.
And maybe some mink setups or whatever you're trying to do, and you'll take those once that rat season comes, because a lot of times once you start rat trapping, a lot of your other season is closed too.
Yeah.
But you chop a hole into the hut. Usually try to do it so it's a chunk that you can take out and you can put right back where you got it. You chop a hole in and you try to find. You reach down in there. Don't get bit. Reach down in there and try to find that flat spot where you can set your trap. And I am going into a lot of detail on this, but
yeah,
where you can set your trap. You stick the trap in there. You try to nest it good so it has a solid base, and it's a good spot where they'll stick their feet in it when they climb out. And what you want to catch is a hind leg, because the hind legs are a lot tougher than the front arms.
Okay, yeah.
Because they'll break off really easy.
Yeah.
I mean, I've caught rats that had three legs because
this
is a hunting podcast. This is the kind of stuff that happens.
It's a legitimate practice.
Right.
Things happen when you're out there.
And there's other times we've caught them by both hind legs and the tail. Like,
oh no,
that
kidding.
one ain't going nowhere.
Yeah.
But there's a whole other stuff that I can get into in methodology and all that. But preparing for that would just be buying the trap. Because if you wait till the season comes to buy the traps,
they ain't going to be there.
They're not going to be there. And once again, it's best to season them.
Yeah.
It's not as crucial, but it's best to have seasoned traps. They will operate better.
Yeah. Now, do you use gloves after you season them whenever you touch them? I know some people, not rat traps. They're not traps.
They don't care.
Okay. Yeah.
No. Nope.
Cool.
They don't care. Like I said, I've chopped a hole open. They're still sitting there, right? But I mean, and we can talk about some stories and stuff with that another time. But
right, like I said, we'll get into a lot more of the details of it, but a lot more of the preparedness for it is just kind of having an idea of what you're going to get into, what kind of things to look at, and again, all of this is during wintertime. So same thing. If you're going to be around water, especially, make sure you've got good clothes on. You maybe even have a spare pair of clothes, like you said, being able to put something dry on.
Yeah,
it is important. If you're going to be risking that situation,
that's a really big deal, especially around beaver huts, because beaver huts tend to have not always, but a lot of times wherever they enter the hut, which you don't usually know where it's at because it's underwater,
right?
They'll have a thin spot in the ice, and you can step into that and disappear, right? Yep. If you step on the wrong spot.
Yeah.
And my dad found a spot where like a moose had fallen through one time.
Ooh, man. I bet that would have been a scene.
Yeah, but it fell in, it was able to climb out, but he saw the sign, like the moose tracks and everything. And,
yeah.
And the same thing goes, if you've got a lake that flows or a pond that flows, there's a flow in and flow out. That flow in and flow out are going to be the thinner spots of the ice.
Right.
Because there's probably still moving water under there.
Yeah. It's all good things to pay attention to. Now, one method that we have in addition to trapping where you can take predators primarily is actually hunting them.
Yep.
Not necessarily trapping them. That's our next one is predator hunting. For anybody wondering what that looks like in Alaska, think of any video you've seen running around where people are murking coyotes in the Midwest, out there. But imagine colder, a lot different species mixed in there, and a lot less active. I'll say that.
They're a lot more. They're a lot more cautious.
They're a lot more cautious. They're a lot smarter, and they just seem to care a lot more that you're there. Coyotes. Back in the middle of the country, the desert areas, things like where a lot of those videos are filmed of guys just blasting light out into fields and shooting these coyotes. Getting multiple sets a night. Those are animals that are pretty used to human activity. They're usually around farms and things like that, agricultural areas. And these animals up here can be very, very hard to see, very hard to, Cats are very sneaky. Lynx, when they come in,
Mm-hmm.
They'll hang in the bushes and just hang
They'll
there.
circle around you.
Yep, circle around you. Sometimes, you know, and it's all variable. You know, if you're good at what you do and you hide your scent and you hide your movement and you're not making noise. Sometimes, you know, you can get coyotes and foxes to run in on a set. Not unheard of at all up here by any stretch of the imagination. But you do have to be a lot more careful than you would.
And it usually takes a lot
else.
more sets.
Yeah. Yeah. The success rate up here is a lot lower than just about anywhere else.
Guys will spend days and days and days and not get anything.
Yeah. A good place to look for beginner information on that is actually, if you go back in our show, I believe it was episode 21, we had Chris Perez on the show, and he is a pretty obsessive predator hunter. He gets out there a lot. We're actually probably going to bring him on the show again here soon to go over a little bit more of a beginner's kit setup and share a little bit more of his knowledge. Guy's just an absolute wealth of information. But it's a very different ball game, but it can still be very rewarding and very fun.
Right.
You know, when you're out there, things to keep in mind if you're planning on getting out there to do some predator hunting is dress really, really warm for the environment you're going to be in. If it's, you know, a cold winter day and you're getting out there and trying to make, even if you're making multiple sets, each one of those sets is going to run you, you know, anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour, depending on what you're hunting. Yeah. You know, you don't want to sit there all day if nothing's showing up, but you also don't want to be quitting at 15-minute marker if no foxes run in. You want to give them time to come in.
Depends on the area. But
depending on the area, yeah. But for the most part, you know, you want to give them a little bit of time to come in. Most people will tell you at about the hour marker, go maybe over the next hill or something like that, call that area, maybe move to a whole different area if you need to. But you're going to be sitting. And you need to be sitting still, and you need to be not, you know, you can't be rubbing your hands together and making a ton of, you know, doing all this stuff. They see all of that movement. So you need to make sure you're going to be warm without having the ability to build any actual body heat.
Right.
And a lot of people don't realize how much that takes when it's -40 or -30.
-20.
Even -20, even 0, honestly. Yeah. I mean, if you're just sitting there in a snow berm.
So 2 things I've learned recently about that. One is a caloric intake.
Yes.
Eat a candy bar before you jump out.
Yeah.
Even if you just take a couple bites each time. Because that fresh sugar will keep you warm.
It will.
I've noticed that working in the wintertime. If I just have some kind of high caloric food, whether it's a candy bar or whatever it is, or some kind of better sugar that my wife would probably rather I eat. This is better for me, right?
Right.
Something that my body can use quickly and rapidly to create heat. And it makes a huge difference.
Yes.
Even eating it every hour or so.
Absolutely.
Because you can eat, you know, if you eat breakfast and you get out there and start working, it only can be a couple hours. Next thing you know, you're shivering. And it's warmer than it was when you started. But the reason is because your body doesn't have that sugar. It burns it so much faster in the cold.
Yep.
The second thing that I learned, and I used this last winter.
Yep.
The Stealthy Hunter glassing pad was a phenomenal difference maker sitting in the snow.
Yeah.
Because the biggest thing that gets cold is your rear end because you're compressing your clothes. You're compressing all your snow, you know.
Right.
Insulation comes from the right density, right? In a wall, you could take fiberglass insulation and smash it into that wall really tight. And it would lose its insulation value because it's smashed.
You're warming that air that's locked in that insulation essentially, and you have to keep that layer. Otherwise, there's no value to it. So you create cold transfer.
So when you sit down, you're just smashing your insulation in your snow pants or whatever you're wearing, and then you're sitting on the snow, so it just transfers that cold right up into your body from there.
Well, and the other thing is wet.
Well, yeah, that's
as
a huge
it's
thing
transferring
too.
The heat down there and the cold back up to you. You know, I've had even stuff like a lot of Carhartts say, you know, water resistant. That's not enough. When you sit there a while, you know, your rear end's going to get wet, and once you're wet, like you said, that's just recipe for even more cold.
Yeah, I used that Stealthy Hunter pad Predator Colon last year, and I didn't do a ton of it. I didn't get anything, but it made all the difference in the world. Being able to sit longer, more comfortably, not having a cold rear end or a wet rear end, like you said.
Yeah.
Because, you know, it's like a 3/4 inch piece of foam in a what's that? Cordura type, canvas type pad. And it's just big enough for your rear end. And it's awesome. Like, I mean, I used that thing there. I used it sitting on stumps moose hunting.
Yep.
We'll say sitting on stumps moose hunting, it didn't quite cut it. Stumps.
Oh, really?
Well, after an hour or so,
yeah,
it doesn't matter what you're sitting on. When it's a stump, like,
right.
I even had my Stealthy Hunter pad and an inflatable seat, like, on top of it. And I was like switching them, trying to figure out which was better, but I had to keep standing up and like real slow standing up and glassing before I'd sit down because it was just too much. But in the snow in the winter, it made all the difference in the world.
Yep. Yeah. And, just staying warm out there, making sure you're being careful again on water. That's a huge thing. You're going to be possibly calling lower creek areas, ponds, things like that, where you'll get a little bit of visibility. You don't need a ton of visibility because you can, in tighter areas, get them to expose themselves, which kind of aids in using smaller caliber rifles to be able to preserve a lot of that fur. If you've never hunted predators before, one thing to consider is using the appropriate rifle for the job, because you don't want to just destroy every animal you shoot. Using too big of a caliber rifle, you can punch holes in the other side of a fox or a lynx or anything like that there's no coming back from.
Right.
You hit a shoulder bone with the wrong shot placement with a powerful enough rifle. And by powerful enough, I don't mean like a high-powered Magnum. I mean like
right.
It doesn't take a whole lot with an animal the size of a fox or a lynx to blast a hole through the other side of it. So doing your research into that, I can tell you one thing is speed. Speed is one thing that will damage fur really, really quickly. You see a lot of these super fast, super high-speed predator cartridges that are out there, and sometimes they'll work phenomenally. And a lot of the times you're going to see just fist-sized holes out the other side of a fox or something that's really hard to sew up. And if you're really trying to preserve that fur quality, you want to make sure, one, you're hitting it in the boiler room where you're less likely to hit any bone. Because hitting a shoulder, you shatter that bone and it flies out the other side. That's going to rip those hides. The hides are very soft on these things. And the other thing is making sure you use either a solid bullet. This is one of the only times we'll recommend, like FMJ type bullets, is with the appropriate caliber, an FMJ style bullet on a predator is still a viable option to use. And it won't tear the fur up too bad in most cases. Again, shot placement is key. But a frangible bullet with a lower velocity round will work really great as well. It'll get into those vitals. It'll completely grenade. And as long as you're not pushing, crazy amounts of speed, you can get a little faster than you might think you can. But you're not typically going to have an exit hole. And so those are all things that you should research before going out in the field, because it's really nice to bring home a nice, good-looking fox or lynx or something like that. It's a whole nother thing if you cut it in half. It's kind of hard to take pictures. It gets kind of hard to, salvage any kind of usable material off that animal. And the other thing is learning to call and getting the appropriate callers. If you're going to be going out trying to predator hunt, try to get some experience in what calls work in the area you're in, whether it's, and you might hear back and forth stories on whether you're supposed to use calls of local animals in distress. Because for anybody that doesn't know what a predator caller is, you're using either a mouth call or an electronic call to mimic the sound of a prey animal in distress, whether it's a rabbit, squirrel, bird, whatever it might be. Sometimes even bigger than that, calf of bigger ungulates and things like that. And you're just trying to get a predator to come in for an easy meal, or what it thinks is an easy meal. If you're going to use a hand call, get it before, like long before a week prior to your hunt, or you plan on starting. Research which brands are good, which brands most people are using, and get one and practice with it. Get good at it, because with these animals being as smart as they are, if you don't sound legit, they're going to know it. And they might be standing right on the other side of a bush and just curious. they'll look at you, but they're not going to come in because it doesn't sound like a legitimate animal in distress. If you're going to get an e-collar, which is a perfectly viable option, I believe in all of Alaska. I don't think there's anywhere it's illegal as far as I know. But again, do research into that. Look at the sequences. What are people having success with as far as the sequence of calling? And you can call some areas. You'll want to let out a 30-second burst and give it a rest for 10 minutes. See what comes in. Yeah. Let out another 30-second burst. Some people will just absolutely hammer a set, and they'll just basically put that thing on go and let it wail away and see what comes in. That can vary depending on what you're chasing, depending on what kind of call it is. One of the really cool features, if you get up into some of the higher end ones, is you can do dual sound. Mm-hmm. So I've known guys that'll do like either they'll do like an animal in distress, and then let's say like a coyote fight or something like that to kind of initiate a competitive edge, or they'll play like a dying rabbit with ravens in the background.
Or a coyote howl.
Yeah. You can do, and that's the other thing is it's not always just, when you get these e-collars, it's not always just dying animals that it'll mimic. It'll mimic, different yips and different howls that can make, animals get defensive over territory or things like that, come in looking for a fight. There's so much science behind it. And that's one thing we're going to do a full episode on probably at some point, is just the science behind all of that stuff. But in the spirit of how, just getting prepared to go out, make sure you're researching all of that stuff.
Yeah.
Chances in Alaska are a lot lower than a lot of other places. But that's kind of what makes it so much more rewarding. And when you figure it out, when you dial it in, it's going to be a good time. And it's a really great way to get out there in the winter. Kind of what this whole thing's about.
I will say with all those calling things, is so much of it's going to be what you find works for you.
Yeah.
In the areas that you're in,
And it could be different from one range to another. What works on one set might not work on the next set.
1 week to the next.
Right. Yeah. And that's part of the science, is time of year. Are they pairing up? Are they breeding?
Temperature.
Are they, what temperature is it? What food are they after at that point? Things like that. Like what's maybe something they're more familiar with in that area. And, sometimes you can let out the most random animal sound ever, and they'll still come check it out because they're curious.
Well, I think most of us up here any of us who are interested in shooting predators, like during hunting season, moose season, any of us who are interested in like bears and wolves or coyotes or whatever that we happen to see, just because, we're a predator too, and we want to save some of those ungulates for ourselves.
Exactly.
And I think I have like a jackrabbit squealer. I've got a Phelps jackrabbit squealer that just stays in my, if I got my chest rig, if I got my bino harness, it's just there.
Yep. And
it's tied in, so if it does, if it falls out, it's still hung on there. But that way, I may see a bear or a wolf or whatever, and just, hey, I'm gonna let loose, see if the thing will run in where I can shoot it.
And bears will respond to those.
Yeah, they will. And and a lot of guys, that's all they'll do. They just have that, and they'll go call with that.
Yeah.
And they just get some consistency in. You make it sound halfway real.
Yeah.
And that's where a lot of that, where you play it for a little while and shut it off and wait. Because when it's from a further distance, they're not going to necessarily differentiate between time sequences and stuff as much.
Right.
You play it for a few minutes, you squeal on it a few times, and it may sound a lot more realistic to them.
Yep.
I haven't taken anything predator calling myself. Okay. I've been on hunts where guys have.
Yeah.
Usually when I go, it's with somebody. But I want to get into it a lot more this year. I'm planning on building a gun for it specifically.
Nice.
But
yeah. And all of that stuff, I mean, like you said, it can be so subjective, and don't feel like you're stuck to one thing either.
Right.
Play with it, play around, like try different kinds of sets, try different kinds of areas. I know some guys, they'll have two different kinds of calls going at the same time, have their e-collar wailing away and then also use a mouth call.
Yeah.
And just create sequences, create all this stuff. And it's a lot of fun, and it's a great way to keep busy in the wintertime. It's a great way to go out and just collect some fur, and really help control what's going on out there in the woods. Now, one thing I'll point out, even though it's the wintertime and there are, all the bears are asleep for the most part, still keep a sidearm on you.
It's a good idea.
Because there's a lot of I wouldn't say a lot, but I've definitely heard several stories of people calling in wolf packs. Maybe not intentionally, and maybe not in a way that exposes them for good shots even, but they'll come in and check it out same way, and then you might end up with...
It's like my dream is a wolf pack.
I know. But if all you got is a little 22 mag and not a whole lot of bullets...
That's true. Dalton uses a 243 with a slowed down round, because 243 is pretty hot. He carries a slowed down, I think, kind of heavier.
Yeah, I think he's using the FMJs in that too, isn't he?
I think so. Yeah. Custom some hand loads, and he uses that because it's great, because it's big enough for wolf.
Right. Yeah.
But it's slowed down, so it's not going to destroy a fox.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. But the other reason you want to carry a sidearm is because there's still moose out in those woods.
It's true.
And moose, for those that don't know, can be very territorial. And they can be very aggressive. A lot of people you'll talk to in Alaska say they're actually more afraid of moose than they are grizzly bears when it comes to charges and things like that, because a moose, if it just happens to be walking up the trail you're calling on, or there's a cow bedded down when you step off the road to walk wherever you're going to walk, especially if she's got a calf, they can be dangerous, and you want to make sure you're protected. I mean, obviously nobody wants to DLP anything that they don't have to, but you always want to make sure that you're able to stay alive and stay good out there. So let's take one more quick break, and we'll dive into the rest of this.
All right, folks. We all know that one of the most common mishaps in hunting is damage to your rifle scope. Last year, I found the solution to that problem with the Stealthy Hunter rifle cover. It wraps around your scope and actions securely to protect it from getting knocked off of zero or even severely damaged. Stealthy Hunter also has a glassing pad and a wide variety of supplements for the outdoorsman, such as protein powder, CBD products, turmeric, and gut health supplements. They also make a lightweight trauma kit weighing in at just 14 ounces that includes everything you need and nothing you don't for all of your backcountry medical emergencies. To shop all of their equipment and supplements, go to StealthyHunter.com and enter the discount code at checkout, The Northern Hunter, to save on your order today. All Stealthy Hunter equipment is proudly made in the USA.
All right, so that covers a lot of the fur creatures. Now, one important thing I don't think we touched on before is make sure if you're going to go into any of these, whether it's trapping, predator hunting, anything like that, look at your regs.
Yeah.
There is a separate regs book for trapping and fur bears and all that. Make sure you're getting that and reading through it. The seasons are just as variable with fur bears and for trapping and things like that as they are for big game. Different seasons for different zones, for different units. Make sure that you understand where you're at, what you're allowed to do. For like perfect example, for some units during certain seasons, you're able to use like spotlights and night hunt for predators. Other units you do that, big trouble. So make sure you know exactly what you're allowed to do, when you're allowed to do it, and keep yourself out of trouble that way. Ignorance is never an excuse for not following a regulation. But if you don't want to go chase furry critters, you can chase
hairy critters,
scaly critters. Yeah. Below the ice.
Oh yeah, those ones. Yeah. My mind was on something else there.
On the next thing. Yeah. So Alaska's a really great place for ice fishing. And ice fishing is a great way to get out of the house in the wintertime, get out and just spend some time. You can catch some big fish up here if you get in the right spots. And it's not a crazy thing to go do. The only thing that's crazy about it is the temperatures you're going to be battling.
It's not like Midwest ice fishing.
Right. Yeah. No, it's way different. The ice is, later in the year, in the wintertime, I pity you if you're going to go out there with an ice auger or with a hand auger. Because it's not like, even 6 inches of ice. I mean, in some of these lakes, you're talking feet of ice.
3-4 feet easy.
Yeah.
2-3 feet is very common or more.
I would say 2 has been pretty common. 3 is
depends
really
on the winter.
Yeah. If we, with these warmer winters we've been having, it hasn't been as crazy, but a powered auger is really nice.
And another thing that affects that is snowfall, because if you get a lot of snowfall, it creates a lot of weight on the ice, which causes the ice to crack, get overflow. Then that overflow freezes.
Yeah.
Now you've got more ice.
Cycles and cycles. And so, but one of the most common things you're going to be able to ice fish for up here, realistically, at least in the interior, is pike, trout. If you're in like a stocked lake, you can catch salmon, and then grayling are big ones. Those are like the big like lake ice fishing ones you're going to be able to chase. I say chase, but really just go after.
You're just gonna sit.
You're just gonna sit there. You're not really chasing anything. But aside from that, the practice of ice fishing up here, aside from the thickness of the ice and the temperatures outside that you're going to deal with, is largely the same. You're jigging. You're using the same kinds of jigs.
Right.
You can use some. They've got those stink baits that you can use and put on the end of that stuff, and that really works well.
Worms, shrimp,
all that stuff. If you've ice fished anywhere else, you can ice fish up here. It's just going to be a little bit more extreme. Kind of similar to what we were saying with the predator hunting. You ain't going to be moving around a whole lot.
Right.
Now, the good thing is with ice fishing, you can stand up, shake it out, walk around if you want to, especially if you've got like a flip up flag set up where, it just kind of lets you know if something hits. Then you can be up and moving around. And kind of building some body heat. It's not you don't have to be sitting there perfectly still, but you're not going to be building as much body heat as you would if you were, say, snowshoeing a trap line. So keep that in mind. Make sure you're dressing warm. Coveralls are really awesome for ice fishing, or just wear bibs underneath your parka. One thing when you're sitting down ice fishing is the wind can hit you if you're not sheltered in anything and go up that seam line between your waist where your snow pants stop and your coat starts, and that can really create a lot of cold even underneath your coat and just blow that heat right out from under your coat. So I really like wearing coveralls because it completely cuts off that seam. It's a full coverage from your ankles all the way to your neck. But if you don't have coveralls or you don't want to go buy coveralls, then bibs do a pretty decent job as well.
I prefer bibs and a coat because it's not as much ice fishing the same, but we were talking about trapping earlier in this episode. And the really nice thing about bibs is you can pull your coat off.
Yeah, you can.
To cool down.
Because you don't want to get overheated.
You can dump a lot of heat.
Yeah.
And I think the same thing would go with ice fishing too. I prefer bibs because, yes, there is a possibility of a draft, but it's a lot better cut off. I don't like just plain snow pants. Never have.
No, me either.
They fall down easy.
Yeah.
Same reason I don't like regular old rain pants. They just are. They just suck. I mean, there's the only good thing about them is they keep you dry, or in this case, snow pants, they keep you warm.
Right. Yeah. Right. And same thing. A lot of them, you're dealing with the same things with the snow. If you're sitting down, that you want to stay dry from any kind of that.
And the other thing with snow pants is when you sit down in the snow and that back starts to lean back, just like any pants do, they'll scoop that snow right up and shove it right down where you don't want it. You know what I'm talking
sure
about?
Will. I've done. Yep, it's happened to me.
That's why I like bibs.
Yep, I am definitely a bib guy. And bibs, like you had said, if you plan on doing multiple things like ice fishing and trapping, would be a lot more universal for both settings. A good thing, kind of like what you were saying with the like Refrigerwear and even Arctec and all those other ones.
Right.
When you're, they're not super expensive.
No.
You can get into a pair of coveralls for, $200-$300 with one of those, and they actually work really well for what they're designed to do. But just dress warm. Be out. You don't want to be hating life while you're out there. That makes it less fun.
Yeah.
But a good way to do that in an even better way is if you're able to invest in an ice shanty of some sort. They've got a bunch of them in stores all over town, all over any town really that has a population here in Alaska. You'll be able to find different ice shack styles.
Right.
Some are insulated, some aren't, and you want to be careful depending on the temperature range that you're going to be in and the heat source you plan on putting in that thing. If you're using propane,
right,
you want to make sure that you're using a safe propane heat source, and your tent is not just going to condensate with all that propane moisture in there and create more of a problem for you. But the insulated ice fishing huts are really nice. Those are expensive though. You're going to be in several $100s for one of those.
I've never used one of those specifically. My dad has or he did, I think he still has it. he built a ice fishing shack.
Yeah.
Right. And he just put it on skids.
Mm-hmm.
And in the wintertime, he would just hook it up to a snow machine and drive it down onto the ice.
Yep.
And he would drill holes in the ice and then pull it over top of the holes.
Yep.
And then when the holes froze over, you just, next time you go down there, you pull it out. If the ice was too thick, you just pull it out of the way with the sled again.
Yep.
Drill the holes out and slide it back.
Yep.
Now it's a little bit of overflow and it froze into place. Now it all kind of sucks, but
yeah.
But that, now we had a gravel pit close by. It was a stocked gravel pit, and that's what we did a lot growing up.
Yeah. No, and it's a great way to just kill some time.
Right.
A lot of these lakes and stuff like that, you can keep them, you can eat them. If you want to do what do they call that? A catch and cook. Be out there with your Coleman stove and flay up whatever you catch. Some areas, obviously, again, look at the regs, but some areas are catch and release. But
some lakes do require your ice hut to be registered.
They do. Yeah.
So just make sure you look into that. Some of the gravel pits and other stuff way out of town, you might be okay. But if you Birch Lake is real popular, but you're supposed to register your ice huts out there, right?
Yeah.
And I've never done it. I just know that's a thing.
Yeah, you are supposed to. I think it has something to do with whether it's a state recreational area or something like that.
Probably. Which Birch Lake is.
Yeah, it is. A lot of those big ones near town are.
Or Quartz or something like
Quartz.
that. Well, the cool thing with
Hard Luck Lake. Yeah. But with those areas, especially if you're newer to town and you just want to kind of get into it and experience ice fishing in Alaska, a lot of the state recreational lakes will have huts that you can rent.
Yeah.
So once the ice gets thick enough, they'll push these huts out, and some of them, I think Birch Lake has 6 or 8 different huts that they'll put out there depending on the year. And they'll plow out a lane to them and everything.
You can drive your truck right to them.
Oh, I've done that.
Some of them,
It late enough in the year.
Yeah.
Obviously, check the ice thickness.
Quartz Lake will have a road plowed on the ice, all halfway around the lake that you can drive your pickup truck on.
And the rental is, I think it's midnight to midnight, so you can get it for a full day. It's not super expensive. And
never done that either.
It's essentially just a plywood shack that has a wood stove in it. Okay. So you bring your own wood. You can burn wood in there, stay warm. I like burning wood because it's a drier heat. It'll keep you dry. But you can use propane to get it started, get it heated up in there to kick it off. Because when you roll out there and it's -40, it can be a while before that thing really starts holding some heat.
Well, the nice thing about propane too, especially in a plywood shack, it's not as big of a deal. The nice thing about propane is you can start it and it'll just go. Until it runs out.
Exactly.
Right? Whereas wood, you got to stock it. Which is all. With your ice fishing, it's not like you don't have time for it. You could just about bring a tablet or something out there and watch movies while you're ice fishing. Right?
Well, and that's the great thing about it. If somebody doesn't want to dedicate the time to a trap line and they don't want to, dedicate the discipline it takes to predator hunt, but they still want to get out of the house and enjoy the winter times and not just sit on the couch and watch Netflix all day or something like that. And, look out the windows longingly.
Watch Netflix all day.
You can sit in an ice hut and watch Netflix. Exactly. And watch, but the science of that is really not complicated if you have any kind of fishing experience whatsoever. So just understand the situations you're going to get into as far as the weather, and the conditions of the ice. Make sure the ice is safe to walk on always.
Right.
Don't want to be falling through. And just have fun. That's the biggest thing with that is just if you can't stand being out there when it's super cold and you need some kind of a hut to warm up in, that's no shame, right? As long as you're out there having fun and you're enjoying your wintertime. Winter depression up here is real. Yeah. A lot of people get really, really down in the wintertime, and it's totally understandable. It's dark, it's cold. You can't really get out and do a lot of hiking. I mean, there's people that do cross-country skiing and stuff like that, which, great.
Yeah.
But, getting out and being active and doing something that you enjoy is a huge part of enjoying the winters up here. And ice fishing is a great way to do that.
I will say, I think the reason most people get depressed in the wintertime is because they sit inside and watch Netflix.
Exactly.
Right. Yep. We mentioned that. And you know what? Every once in a while, you might take a day and do that. Personally,
I do all the time. I'm not gonna lie.
No wonder you don't get anything done. No, I'm just kidding. Personally, for me, my equivalent to sitting inside watching Netflix all day is actually sitting down and watching a movie all the way through.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. It happens maybe 3 or 4 times a year.
Yeah.
Right. I feel like I watch more movies in the middle of the day or at night during a hunting season because
do you really?
There's nothing else to do than I will
during
the regular because there's so much going on. If I'm at home trying to spend time with my family, which isn't necessarily watching a movie, right?
That's true, yeah.
Or if I'm, or I'm on my computer editing podcasts, working on the website. If I'm not working on our website, I'm working on somebody else's website.
Yeah.
I'm researching, I'm studying, there's
keeping yourself busy.
There's so much to do.
Right.
And so little time to do it.
Yep. I take advantage a little bit of the hibernation. Now we'll see how that goes this year with some of the things we have planned to do. I don't think I'm going to have time to hibernate, but there's that saying that, Alaskans sleep in the winter. It's kind of the same thing. You're running around like crazy all summer. There's no shame in taking some downtime,
right.
Catching up on sleep, catching up on rest, for me, it's just me and my wife, we don't have children right now. So for us, sitting down and binge watching some Homestead Rescue or something like that is that's a good quality time experience. Really? It's a great show. You should look it up.
There's a lot of shows I haven't heard of. I don't have time to watch them. Well, and I do have kids, so that's a whole different.
Exactly. Yeah. You need a lot more quality time there. But if you want to get out of the house, you can't do that all the time, because that's when you do start getting that lack of sunlight. What little sunlight we do have here, you should really be taking advantage of. And getting out and just doing some fishing. It's a great way to do it. Now, one cool fish that we have up here, is the burbot. And that one can be a little bit different.
Yeah. I've never fished for it.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. We'll have to go out and do that this winter. So with burbot, you can sit there and dip a fishing pole in the water and just kind of bounce it off the bottom if you want to. Right. And that you will catch them that way. But what a lot of people will do is they'll do set lines. So the difference between that's one big difference. The other difference is that there are some lakes. I'd have to look in and see if in the interior. I know in Southeast, there's a lot of lakes that have burbot in them. But up here in the interior, a lot of the times they're in the rivers and
they're
sloughs.
In some lakes here too.
And yeah, I'm sure they are. I just don't know which ones.
Right.
But when you can go out there in the wintertime, once these rivers are sufficiently iced up and it's safe to walk on, and you can go out there, same thing as on a lake, drill a hole in the ice. You can drop your set lines in there, and there's some requirements there. I took
some rivers you're not allowed to use set lines, like that's all.
Yeah, obviously, always look at the regs. Yeah. But if you are setting lines for these things, you wanna. It's not like a trot line. No. For anybody that's familiar with trot lines, it's a different. You're drilling a hole in the ice, and you set a rod of some sort, whether you use a branch or you bring out a special dowel rod or, anything that you want that's going to kind of rest on top of that hole, keep that line from going under.
Use your rat sticks.
Yeah, use your rat sticks. And you take like some 550 cord or something like that, and you gauge how much you need to reach the bottom, because that's one kicker there is burbot. They're a really interesting fish.
They're a bottom feeder, aren't they?
They're a cod.
Okay.
That act like a catfish and taste like a lobster. So they're really good eating. One of the names for them, if anybody's familiar with them or not familiar with them, is poor man's lobster.
Okay.
And there's the weird thing about burbot is regionally they have like probably a dozen different names for them, and they're an odd looking fish.
Yeah.
But essentially, you take a stick that'll clear both sides of that hole, so that way it can't fall through. You tie your set line off to that, and you want to use a heavy weight at the end of your line so it holds it at the bottom, especially if you're in currented water. Now, if you're in a lake that has burbot and you're able to do set lines for burbot in that lake, then you don't have to use as heavy of a weight because there's no moving water down there. But one of the rules is your set has to be on the bottom of whatever water source you're using. There are hook requirements. One of them is your hook has to have a gap of at least 3/4 inch or greater from the point to the shank. Okay. So you have to use a big hook for these things, which are easy to find. They're in every single fishing store.
You don't use like a halibut style hook, do you?
It almost looks like that.
Okay.
It does. It has a really wide hook and then comes back
in.
Yep, and comes back in. It's a very similar looking hook, just the little tiny version of it.
Not the big of, not 3 inches or whatever.
Exactly. Yep. But you just put, if you're in moving water, an 8-ounce weight at least. will get you down to the bottom and make it to where you're not just running that thing out and it's not freezing to the side of the hole that you're digging. And then they just like not live, but once living bait is the best thing you can use for them. They're very dependent on smell.
Okay.
So if a lot of people used to say you could use other tackle for them, but realistically, if you just put like some herring or something like that on that hook, that's going to be your best bet. Cut them in half, make
like
sure
shrimp.
I've never heard of anybody using shrimp. I know
that's more curiosity.
Yeah, I've never heard of that. It might work. They're a predatory fish, so they're just going to go after whatever they find tasty. Lamprey is another really good one that people like to use. But good luck finding some in this town.
For ice fishing in general, or regular just like bait fishing offshore in the summertime, one of the best baits I've found that, growing up that we use all the time is we just go to the store and go buy those frozen little tiny, like the popcorn size shrimp.
Yeah, the cocktail shrimp.
Yeah, exactly. The cocktail shrimp. You just buy that and you just throw it in the, and you just take a little bit with you every time.
Yep. And I think that's the same thing. It's that it's not only alluring because shrimp will obviously spin in the water as you're jigging, but it has a scent to it, a smell in the water. And so these fish can catch onto that. Right. And so the other thing with burbot lines specifically is there's some requirements as far as setting them. You have to tag your set line if you go out and do that. You can't just randomly go out there and drill a hole and put it in there and just leave. You've got to have a tag on it with your name. Fish and Game has, I think, some templates you can use to make that tag. So obviously use their template because then that's the best way to not get in trouble. You have to check it daily. So you cannot set it and then come back 3 days later. You have to be able to check it daily. So the best practice I've done is you set them in an evening time, like after work, because most, like, burbot will bite any time of day. They are, obviously hungry all day, but they're most active during the darker hours. So
in the
wintertime, it's always dark, right? So, and the other thing is they like cold water. They are very cold water fish. So, one thing that they hang out in like confluences a lot too, because that'll be where, their prey is coming in and out and everything. So look for those kinds of conditions and make sure you're checking it daily. If you set it after work one day, make sure you can come back and check it the next day.
Okay.
Now, as far as I know, there's no, like, I don't think you have to update your tag, that your little label tag on your lines, every time you check it. I'm not aware of any requirement that you have to do that. But they do, Fish and Game will check lines every once in a while, especially if they see them. If you got a flag marker or something like that, they'll pull it up. And if there's old fish on there and they can usually tell how long the fish has been on the line and dead for, you will get in trouble. That's a
Let me throw out a hypothetical for you.
Yeah.
Say you find a state cabin somewhere that's got a lake nearby. You rent it. You run out there with your sleds. You could set burbot lines and then go predator call.
Yeah.
And then come back and check your burbot lines.
Yeah, absolutely.
That sounds like
that
sounds like a great trip.
That sounds like a good idea, Mo.
Okay.
And the other thing too, you can set multiple hooks on each line. So
you set them like a foot apart or something? Or?
Yeah, normally. So you want to have your main line, and then you put leaders on that line that'll hold the hooks off to either side. Okay. What I'll normally do when I'm building them is
like those sprung leaders?
Just the spinner leader. Yeah, like the 18-inch, 1 foot, steel leaders, just to hold it off the edge of the line a little bit. Put your hook at the end of that. But what I'll normally do when I'm building them with 550 cord is I'll take those leaders and I'll lay them down on the cord and make sure that they're not touching enough for the hooks to get tangled up, because that is one of the most annoying things is when you go to pull your line back up and nothing's on it and your hooks are all tangled up because the current pushed things around and whatnot. So as long as you just keep them spread out enough that they're not going to tangle up on each other. And keep in mind, you're only allowed to have as many hooks on a line as the bag limit is for the day. So, and that is one thing that will change sometimes lake to lake, sometimes unit to unit.
Does that change also? Is that how many hooks you have in the water?
How many hooks you have in the water.
Total.
So if you spread that out across 3 set lines, 1 set line, doesn't matter. But you can't have more hooks in the water under your name than what the total daily bag limit is for that lake, river, whatever system you're running.
Right. So for just asking questions here. Obviously, like I said, I've never done this, but I'm interested in it. I'd like to try it this winter. So I've known a lot of guys that will do like just a one day, like say Saturday or Sunday. They just go out there all day.
Yeah.
And they do it for the day. Because, most people, it's not realistic to set it one night and come check it the next night. Right. Because, there's a good chance it's going to be 30 minutes or an hour away from your house.
Right. Yeah.
And if you have time, then great, you can do that. But I don't really have that kind of time.
Right.
Maybe in the winter time.
And a lot of people don't.
Right.
Yeah.
So, or I don't have the guarantee. Like I might be able to, but something might come up and I'm not going to be able to check it that next day.
No, being out there for just a day is still perfectly viable. Like I said, you can even fish for these things actively.
Right.
If you just want to go out there and bring your actual ice fishing pole and with
just
your
jig near the bottom.
Just jig near the bottom. You take the weight. You want your weight, I'd say 18 inches away from the end of your line.
Okay.
So that way it's on the bottom, but the bait can still kind of flow around a little bit. And you almost act like you're halibut fishing. You just kind of bounce that weight off the bottom. That moves it around a little bit, kind of gets it flopping around. And if you're using bait that was, like let's say herring or lamprey or anything like that, people can use like chicken gizzards and liver and stuff like that. Anything that's stinky smelling. Think of almost like catfish fishing. But you can literally be out there just during the day and ice fish for them off a regular pole. And you have good chances. I mean, they'll bite pretty much any time. I mean, you just have a better chance later in the day because they tend to get a little bit more active. So an evening after work, if you just want to go out and drill a hole in a river right by where the confluence of maybe a smaller water system and just jig for them a little bit, just bounce that weight right off the bottom and just sit there. You'll be perfectly successful there too. So
cool.
Yeah. But that pretty much wraps up ice fishing. It's pretty straightforward.
Right.
Just drill a hole and go fish. So
we've covered the fur.
Stay warm.
Right. We've covered the fur.
We have.
We've covered the fish.
We have.
Let's get to the game.
There is still big game to chase in the wintertime. Right. Caribou specifically. And some moose.
Some moose.
So
depending on the area and the time.
Yeah.
So a lot of stuff. But
yeah, the moose are much more limited during that time of year, but
there's draw hunts for moose is mostly what those are.
Yeah.
Or like very remote areas.
Right. In remote areas and even some non-remote areas. Do some research because all over the state there are winter moose hunts that you can go out to. Some are antlerless, if they're late enough in the year.
Right.
Some are, have similar requirements, but and some are, archery only. Some are firearms. Some are muzzleloader. Yeah. There's a ton of opportunity there still, but the most common thing, big game that people chase during the wintertime is caribou. Several different herds you can chase mostly through the year. If you go, I believe up is open pretty much till the end of March, I want to say.
From the fall to the spring, pretty much.
Yeah, I think March 31st is when it closes down.
And it's kind of weird up there with the way the units and things work. Like there's sections of the road that like one side of the road is open and the other side of the road isn't, or there's a different limit depending on the side of the road.
Right, yeah.
It's been a while since I've gone through I used to know what it was because I used to drive it for work. And the company I worked for wouldn't have been a big deal if I'd stepped outside the road and shot a caribou with my bow.
Right. Yeah.
I worked with truck drivers. Be like, yeah, we'll throw it on the truck. But that was, I used to know all that, but that's honestly, I think the best time to hunt the haul road for caribou is probably in the wintertime.
Yeah.
Because you can put overwhites on and you can blend in with the terrain.
Yep.
I've talked to guys who have done it. And so when it's snowing, now it's a lot easier to get lost when it's snowing, especially if you're doing a long hike.
And especially if it's windy. Because that whiteout gets real.
Also, that snowing, if you're wearing overwhites, you can walk right up to the caribou.
Yeah.
Because they can't see you.
Right.
Because the snow, just the same way you can't hardly see them. Right. But when you're wearing whites, you can get a lot closer, a lot easier.
Yep.
Dalton and I went up there to do some predator calling, right? Last winter. And we had the thought beforehand, should we bring our bows? And we're like, nah. We got up there and there were caribou everywhere.
Was there? Yeah.
I mean, we could have probably both limited out if we really wanted to. It was sad.
That's awesome.
But
yeah. The I know you really got to watch the migrations up there and where they're wintering and things like that, and keep an eye on that, because that is a long ways to go just to have a long barren stretch of road. But I've heard a lot of people having great success up there. A lot of people that do their research, be safe, go up there and just clean house. But the other, I would say, big one here in the state is the 40-mile hunt continues into the winter, usually.
The winter 40-mile hunt, specifically.
That's true. It is a different registration hunt. Yeah. So you have to go in, you have to report the fall, get your registration for the winter hunt. But that's one where you've really, I mean, all of these are, but you've really got to watch the opening and the quotas on those.
Yeah.
Because like with this year, they had 680 bulls taken in just 2 of the zones, where the total harvest quota for all 4 zones was only 750. Now, last I heard, they haven't released the update yet as the time that we're recording this, but last I've heard, we're still below that 750 total quota mark for the fall hunt.
Called the hotline yesterday. It was still the 1 and 4.
1 and 4.
Or is it 1 and 4 were closed? 2 and 3 are open.
Correct.
2 and 3 are still open.
Correct. Yep.
And 1 and 4 are not set to open in the winter, I believe.
Okay.
I believe is what they said. I may be wrong about that, but 2 and 3 were still open as of this recording.
Okay.
But call the hotline and check, because this is a week ago.
Absolutely. And I think the last report I heard was like, I think zone 3, there were 40 something caribou taken in zone 3 and only like 8 or 9 taken in zone 2. So we might slide in right underneath that quota. We might overshoot a little bit. That hunt will be over here in a couple weeks, and we'll find out for sure. They'll release the winter information in October, is what they said.
I think they set a quota for the fall, trying to leave some for the winter.
They did, yeah.
So
I believe the total they were trying to take out for this year was 1,000.
Okay.
So they did 750 for the fall, 250 for the for the winter. If we overshoot, though, they're going to have to limit the winter hunt to keep it within that 1,000 taken, or not open the winter hunt at all, depending on how it looks.
Yeah.
Especially how many cows are taken, because it is a bull only hunt this year. So it'll be interesting, but definitely call the hotline, keep up to date. I think at the end of that recorded statement, they say like sometime in early October, they'll release the actual quotas and the actual dates for the winter hunt. But that is a rifle hunt. So if you don't have a bow, you don't want to, drive 12 hours to go bow hunt something. That's a viable option to go chase some caribou around in the wintertime. Access, same thing, snow machine or snowshoes. Great way to get around out there. And caribou country is typically windy. So
it can be. It's funny because it can be so different one day to the next.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I've been up there and shot caribou, and it's just beautiful. Not windy, sun's out.
Well, in some of those days,
like 20 degrees.
Yeah. Well, in some of those days when the sun's out nice and shining, even if it's -10, I mean, you could be out there and, you still have your bibs on, but, strip your coat off and everything.
You get hot.
Yeah. The other thing I like about winter caribou hunting is the pack out always seems so much easier. You bring an otter sled with you or something like that and roll it into that. And you can just, even if you're just on snowshoes, you just drag it right out of there.
Yeah. Personally, I prefer snow machine.
Yeah, I do too. And we'll talk a lot more about that in the next episode. See, I can do foreshadowing too.
Oh, look at that.
But
look at that.
I'm catching on.
See, personally, I'm just going to say this. One of my big things I wanted to do doing these 2 episodes a week is I wanted to do more foreshadowing. Because we haven't really done that in the past.
Well,
we haven't done it at all.
Haven't really done it at all, yeah.
So I like foreshadowing. I think it helps.
Got to give people something to look forward to.
Right. So we're going to talk about some snow machining in the next episode.
Exactly. But all right, well, think we've pretty much beaten this one to death.
I think so.
That's this is all there's even more stuff to do up here in the wintertime. We touched a little bit on some of the non-hunting activities. So you can definitely mix some of those in with it. I mean, just snowshoeing around out behind your house or something like that is a great way to stay in shape. Keep yourself in shape for bear season come spring. Make sure you're not, just missing out on all that daylight we get. The 4 hours we get in the middle of the day.
Right.
But just keeping active, keeping out there. It's a great way to keep your morale up through the winter months. And, this is this is the time when we really pay our rent to the state, going through the winters and dealing with it so we can enjoy these summers. And, it doesn't have to be a downtime. So keep that in mind. Make sure you're getting out there and being active. And if you have any questions about anything we talked about in the show today, definitely reach out. We've got our social medias. If you search at the Northern Hunter on Facebook or Instagram, or if you're at the website, you can hit the contact button, throw a little bit of information in there, and you'll be able to get a message right to us. While you're there, if you go to the shop page, got some great merch there. New stuff always coming. We've got hats, hoodies, t-shirts. Mo's wearing a hoodie right now. Yep. Looks real sharp. And we have our sponsor page, partners, where a bunch of great companies, a bunch of great gear. They've all gotten together and believed in what we're doing. Hopefully you guys do too. If you shop from any of those sponsors, use the discount codes that are labeled below them. We've got those links both in the partners page on the website and in the show notes for this show. So we appreciate any support. And as always, share the show as much as you can with your friends. We've had a lot of trouble with social media. And the more we can spread the word to people who need it, the faster we'll be able to grow and make more content for you guys and just show you all about life in Alaska. So we appreciate you guys. We're going to sign off for Monday. And until Thursday, get out there, get after it, and good luck. See you there.
All right, folks. We all know that one of the most common mishaps in hunting is damage to your rifle scope. Last year, I found the solution to that problem with the STEALTHY Hunter rifle cover. It wraps around your scope and actions securely to protect it from getting knocked off of zero or even severely damaged. STEALTHY Hunter also has a glassing pad and a wide variety of supplements for the outdoorsman, such as protein powder, CBD products, turmeric, and gut health supplements. They also make a lightweight trauma kit weighing in at just 14 ounces that includes everything you need and nothing you don't for all of your backcountry medical emergencies. To shop all of their equipment and supplements, go to STEALTHYHunter.com and enter the discount code at checkout, The Northern Hunter, to save on your order today. All STEALTHY Hunter equipment is proudly made in the USA.